This is Alvin on the mic. When I talk it right, and I'm talking about AIDS, the killer of the night. I know you've heard it all before. This AIDS epidemic killing more and more. But this is true. This is a definite fact. AIDS is out to kill and it's out to attack. But we can't fight this deadly disease by living our lives the way it should be. With protection results, no infection, and by not sharing needles. Man, you know that's dumb. AIDS is killing our babies. It's killing our mothers. It's killing our black, white sisters and brothers. It's killing our youth, our tomorrow's stars. And it might kill you before you get too far. AIDS is here. Ignore it, we can't. It's a vicious no killer in a body plant. So take my advice and have safe sex. Don't share needles. Yeah, I think that's best. AIDS is looking for one small hole so it can get inside.
In order to present this highly important information properly, we have included somewhat frank language and sexually explicit material you may find objectionable. However, I can assure you the program's content is of the highest caliber, so we do hope you will stay with us.
Good evening. I'm Elizabeth Taylor.
And I'm Liberace.
As AIDS activists, we believe in just saying no to hysteria and just saying yes to anger.
Because there's lots to be mad about.
But also lots to be proud about.
Mad about the criminal negligence of the government, the media, the medical establishment, the pharmaceutical companies.
Proud about the groundswell of grassroots AIDS work in communities across the country.
We feel it's time to fight back, and that's what all these tapes are about, right, Liz?
You bet, Lib.
Liz.
Lee, artists and access producers from all over the country sent us their work. So if the show seems frantic and rushed, well, it's because there's so much to say.
So let's start with the media. For many of us, it's been enemy number one.
The Sunday People printed 2 photographs of Kenny Ramsar, a gay man who was dying of AIDS. According to this newspaper, these pictures revealed the disturbing truth about AIDS sickness. It seems that the Sunday People has taken up a question which has troubled the medical profession since the last century. How does one form a true picture of an illness? The media's answer to this question is similar to the solution which was first suggested by medical science. Identify and isolate certain social groups, and then describe them as being inherently ill. Yet again, the media is painting menacing pictures of homosexuals. It should therefore come as no surprise that when a reporter is sent in search of the homosexual in his heartland, he is only sighted at a distance, in dark corners like an exotic creature which shies away from the light. Perhaps this reporter, like the medical profession itself, doubts whether there is enough light to get a picture. Fortunately for him, Kenny Ramsar was brave enough to emerge from this twilight world to sit under a photographer's light, and so we get 2 pictures. But in this newspaper, the photograph of Kenny, which was taken by a friend, becomes a picture of a homosexual, and the photograph which was taken by a journalist becomes a picture of a disease.
You're on the air.
Oh, good evening. I have 2 questions for Dr. Mason. One is, if we had no more drug addicts using dirty needles, if we had no more people engaging in anal intercourse, would that wipe out this disease in a relatively short number of years in America?
I'm interested in knowing what's going to happen to my kids, and we've got to do something about it.
The public will react in far different ways, and very, very
unpleasant way.
They've agreed to try and isolate this person.
Tomorrow we'll have sunny skies, but chilly temperatures in the low or mid-20s.
In California, this play was presented to educate people about Proposition 64, the Lyndon LaRouche initiative that would have quarantined all so-called AIDS carriers.
You know, I've been giving our situation some serious thought, Dean. They're just using the riots as an excuse to round us all up. And I do not think they brought us up here just to test our blood. I think they wanted to corral 80 or 90,000 gay men in Griffith Park.
So they could screw themselves to death? What'd you expect them to do, form a monastery?
Dean, I'm not kidding.
Those boys can only work on their tans for so long.
They're trying to wipe us out. The late, great liberal state of California is actually quarantining gays. God save the queens.
We could never get started without our morning coffee, baby, could we? Stop.
It's not just California anymore, Dean. You know, 16 other states have...
Oh, Jesus Christ,
now.
Craig, no one knows what's going on here. Please, do we have to discuss politics every goddamn morning?
They're trying to sell us a new concept, man. Fear the queer.
Oh, Craig, wake up and smell the toast. They're not trying it, they're doing it. There's not much we can do about it, not now anyway. What we have to do is we have to concentrate on surviving. Oh, God, maybe we should drink decaffeinated.
Discrimination against people with AIDS in the workforce has been called the second epidemic.
Emotionally, it's a terrifically a debilitating, emasculating feeling of powerlessness in a society in which you are led to believe, as you grow up in it, that you're going to be protected by the society if you play the games or play by the rules that the society has established, and you suddenly become aware that you're very easily disenfranchised. I've been lucky; I've been able to maintain my job because I have a very benevolent boss. But most people, lose their jobs, and they don't have the ability to tolerate the long legal battle to fight the employer through the court system, so they never come to any conclusion on that other than losing their jobs and dying in poverty.
I am normal just like anyone else, and I should be allowed to come to my job as long as I am physically able to do so, just like anyone else.
If I had to fight being shunned by friends and employer, and the amount of stress I was under just with the physical affliction, I think that on top of it, I might not have been able to kick it and rise up again. I'm very fortunate to have had the support I've had.
I'm not a criminal. I haven't committed a crime. I'm no threat to anyone where I work. And I'm just like, I'm exactly the way I was, except that I've been diagnosed with AIDS-related complex, that's all.
I could stay in my job. Until now, anyway. I've been doing pretty good health-wise. Mentally, it's been rough. But physically, I definitely could have worked as long as, until at least now.
The Florida Human Rights Commission ruled that AIDS is a disabling disease, and employees have the right to full benefits. Todd Shuttleworth was offered a new job with Broward County and $190,000 in back wages and benefits. But he was too ill to return to work. Todd died in July.
For many, fighting back also means finding new words to express grief.
They die without warning. They die without warning. They die without darkness replaces sunrise, and they are reminded of their sins. Condemned by those outside the city wall. Condemned relatives outside the city's wall. Still I keep their safe existence. Still I refuse to leave here. My sinners are my friends. My slandered life is here. The sinners are my friends. Slandered and crucified for living. Units of segregation in the city. The air is thick with change.
Even within the city.
People segregation.
The air is thick with change.
Newscasters flaunt their homophobic heckles, and tomorrow holds a desperate doom.
They
are your brothers.
And tomorrow holds a desperate doom.
They are your flesh and blood, and the plague will not always be selected. Dare you turn your heads away, sweat my city. Dare you wash your hands for tomorrow. They are your brothers, sweat my city. They are your friends. They are your flesh and blood, and the plague.
They are your flesh and blood, and the plague will not always be selective. A plague has swept my city.
A plague has swept my city. Within the laughter echoes sorrow.
And within the laughter echoes sorrow.
A plague has swept my city, and within the laughter echoes sorrow.
Designed to be modular and portable, the show traveled throughout the city to street fairs, jails, and hospitals. On many occasions, the play performed before Shanti Project, an organization that trains volunteers to provide support for people living and dying with AIDS.
You see, in this land of free speech, the dying are supposed to go quietly for the sake of the living. Well, Jeffrey shattered the myth of the dignified death. He was pissed off and he didn't care who knew it. He said, fuck Death Be Not Proud and Love Story and Brian's Song and Marcus Welby and Bang the Drum Slowly. He had this voracious kind of self-pity that's usually reserved for homeowners who've lost their belongings in mudslides. Towards the end, it got really bad. He got some kind of fungus, and his toenails started falling out. And one day, I just lost it. I said, take me. Honest to God, if I could trade places with you, I would. Don't take him, take me instead. And then Jeffrey's trying to comfort me. He said, oh, come on now. You know you don't really mean that. And I said, you're right. Take Nancy Reagan! Well, he laughed so hard he tore his tube out of his nose and we had to ring for the nurse. It wasn't pretty. It's harder on holidays. You know, Easter and then the 4th, his birthday, my birthday. Memorial Day was hard. I didn't go to Land's End this year. I went to the cemetery. But I didn't put flowers on the grave. I just sprinkled a little paprika.
Next to me, on his I Love New York beach mat, dreads cascading down his head, Duke eased through his 100th daily push-up. Every inch of his 6-foot taut body glistened deliciously, like honey. Many a passing glance sized him up. But the dude was all mine, had been mine for 10 years. The dude was so fine that I paid no attention to a spot on his left foot, right below the big toe. A spot, small, purple, like the stain of a crushed grape. Soon after, it multiplied like stars in the early evening, like buds on a tree in early spring. It multiplied all over his feet, his leg, up his ass, inside his intestines, all over his face, his neck, down his throat, inside his brain. For 9 months of fever and whacking coughs, 9 months of sweat and shaking chills, 9 months of diarrhea and jerking spasms. Oh, they multiplied. Wrenched him skinny like a spider.
Danny, when I look at all these pictures of you, I can see that the chemotherapy caused your appearance to change drastically from week to week. One day when you walked into the studio, I thought you looked like a longshoreman who had just been in a fight. The only time I ever saw you cry was on Christmas Eve, when your doctor told you that the chemotherapy was no longer working.
The fight against AIDS has enlisted hundreds of thousands of community volunteers to provide specialized services.
Enough. Now, there are makeups that have been touted as good makeups for chaos. I think Dermablend.
Too pasty looking.
It is.
Yeah,
okay.
It gets cakey. Yeah, pancake on men is tough.
Yeah.
Because it's really matte.
It's really heavy.
You know, that's
What's pan stick? Is that?
Pan stick is good.
Okay.
Pan stick is good. If you could find a good Max Factor pan stick, that'll work on. That'd be great. And it'll last for. You'll have it forever. You'll never run out.
Great.
So that would be good.
What kinds of questions have people asked you when they're in here? Any information?
We very rarely talk about makeup. We do. It's the truth. We speak about other problems what we speak about is the problems people have had.
Sure.
Not covering them. That's usually the main topic. Like I couldn't get a cab to take me for chemotherapy because I stood on the corner and every time I raised my arm, they would pull over and look out and say, oh, and off they'd go. You know, so those kind of hassles. One guy last week said he was told not to shop in a grocery store anymore. You know, a certain grocery store in his neighborhood. And I guess that can be a problem. And one fellow said about visualization. They were teaching visualization in a, I guess, psychotherapy class or something. And he had said, how can I visualize this is not here? And he had 2/3 of his face was purple, you know, from the KS. But once the makeup was on, it was like a lot easier. He was able to get in the car and drive to the hospital and not feel like everybody's staring inside the car window, you know, so he could be.
I know what that feeling's like.
Yeah.
Before I had the radiation, I had very dark lesions here, 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 here. And it is rough, you know. You wake up in the morning and you look in the mirror and it's like slap, you know, the first thing you get hit with is, hi, you've got AIDS.
Yeah, huh?
Increasingly, AIDS activists are taking to the streets to demand better funding, better services, and the release of drugs for treating AIDS-related illnesses.
My name is Mark Fotopoulos, and I'm working with ACT UP, the AIDS Coalition Unleash Power. We're here to protest the mismanagement of the government-designated AIDS treatment evaluation units, of which Sloan Kettering is one of 19. Congress allocated $47 million a year ago for these 19 hospitals to do drug trials on up to 10,000 people with AIDS. And to date, a year since that money was allocated, only 844 people have been enrolled in these protocols, most of which are just testing and retesting AZT, which is a drug that's already been approved and released by the FDA.
The NIH will blame the ATEUs for mismanagement. The ATEUs blame the NIH and the FDA for red tape. Everybody blames the drug companies for not making the drugs readily available.
I'm sorry to say that I think people in this government don't care about the people who are dying from AIDS. And I'm not about to sit back and let them watch me die.
I'm a recovering addict, and I have a lot of friends that are dying from this disease that are in recovery, or they're in recovery from behind shooting drugs and are in recovery today that have good jobs today and they're back in society and are coming up with AIDS, and there's nothing being done about AIDS, and I feel that they should spend more money on research instead of testing.
I don't think this is so different from any other way that the healthcare system has dealt with most people they don't like. Women haven't gotten well treated, poor people haven't gotten well treated, blacks and Latins, immigrants. It's historic in this country.
According to the report from the Office of Technology Assessment in the year 1981, the Reagan administration proposed budget for AIDS research was naught. The proposed budget for research and education in 1982 was naught. In 1983, President Ronald Wilson Reagan and his administration's proposed budget for the epidemic of acquired immune deficiency syndrome was naught. It wasn't until 1984 that the president proposed spending money on those in the United States who are dying.
By the end of 1982, the AIDS epidemic was raging. New cases were being diagnosed every day. Where was the press during all this? In October of 1982, there was discovered cyanide in a batch of Tylenol capsules in a Chicago suburb. The event made front-page news in all the leading news publications. The New York Times wrote an article on the scare every day for a month and produced 23 more articles in the 2 following months. 4 of the stories appeared on the front page. The Food and Drug Administration issued orders removing the drug from store shelves across the country and put together a task force of 1,100 employees. Johnson & Johnson spent over $1 million in testing and production of safety caps, and within 5 weeks, the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services issued new regulations on tamper-resistant packaging.
Master Ronnie appoints the commission. So what's on your mind, Mr. President?
Well, I'm Master Ronnie, and I'm here to say it's time my commission got underway. But they can't work fast, they can't be smart, because if they don't reflect me, then I don't want a part. Ha, ha, I need some racists, you know what I say? I need some sexists, you know what I say? I need some racists, some sexists, some homophobes, no one who even looks gay. So they got to be male, they got to be white, they got to be straight and leaning to the right. Ha, ha, they need some girls, just a few, for point from Jaffrey's feminine crew. Need some blacks? Perhaps you're right. Wouldn't want them to think the folks with AIDS are white. Huh, huh, what's that? What's that, you say? I need to appoint a man who's gay? Well, don't push me, 'cause I'm close to the edge. I'm trying not to lose my friends. Ha, 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 ha. It's like a joke sometimes. It makes me wonder how I keep it going.
Come out! Come out! Come out! Come out!
AIDS has crossed all boundaries in the community. It's tended to politicize people because we're fighting for our lives.
We must be stronger than ever before. And
While AIDS has served as a dramatic unifying force within the gay community, critical divisions remain.
The outreach to provide the message of AIDS has not focused on the minority communities in San Francisco. It's kind of like, we don't actively discriminate, we just don't include you.
I think the greatest single problem has been the way in which blacks and Latinos and Asians have not been basically involved. The leadership around AIDS is almost exclusively white.
Most of the support programs certainly were conceived and basically put forth to do education and prevention and to be support services for gay white men. What has happened is, we're trying to play catch up now.
Educational tapes like this use dramatic strategies to talk about difficult issues like HIV antibody testing.
Clean bill of health. I'm negative.
Excuse me, yo, cuz, what are you negative from, man? You sick or something?
No, I just got the results of my AIDS antibody test. I tested negative and we're celebrating.
AIDS? You're not gay?
No, he's not gay. Besides, being homosexual doesn't mean you have AIDS.
That's how you get it.
No, you don't get it from being gay. You get it from a virus. It's just that some unprotected sexual practices can put you in a very high-risk situation.
What do you mean by high risk, man? I wouldn't wish nothing for AIDS.
You already do. You use junk and...
Hey, Shirley, you don't know nothing about what I do, so don't be jumping to conclusions.
Oh, chill out, Raymond. You a dope fiend and you know it.
Hey, man, if I am, you am.
At least I can speak English. So what about this high risk? I thought if I wasn't gay, I had nothing to worry about.
Well, you've got a lot to be worried about because you have a drug habit that you sustain by using needles.
So what?
Don't get defensive. I'm just giving you some information. It could save your life. Now, next to gays, AIDS hits drug users the hardest. 1 out of 4 people with AIDS is a user.
Now look, Johnny, you share your outfit, don't you? Now that puts you at very high risk for AIDS. Tell him, Shirley.
Look, first off, we know that AIDS is a virus that's transmitted through an infected person. That could be through sex, no matter if you're gay or straight, through pregnancy if the mother's infected, and blood transfusion prior to 1984, and through the use of dirty needles.
I clean my works with water every time. I thought that worked.
No, because you see, invisible particles of the infected blood can remain in the needle, or the syringe, or the bulb, or the plunger, and can be injected into the next user of those works.
Look, if you're at high risk, if you use needles and drugs, if you have many different sexual partners, or if you have sex with high-risk people, then you can probably assume that you've been exposed to the virus. and you can spread it to other people. And that's all the test will show anyway.
There's another kind of risk. Most people just don't understand what the test results mean. And if they find out that you've been exposed to the virus, they get scared. And they can get mean. The information you get can change your life. So be sure the test results are kept confidential.
In the name of public health,
HIV antibody testing has increasingly become one of the hottest political issues of the AIDS war.
I think that mandatory testing poses a threat to everyone, and one of the unfortunate misconceptions of the AIDS epidemic is that by labeling certain groups of people, we are attempting to insulate ourselves and avoid addressing AIDS as a health problem, as a societal problem.
I think we need to be able to spell out and say on every occasion that the entire testing agenda is not about compulsion, it is about punishment. And we should be speaking not of compulsory testing, but of punitive testing, and resist it.
We are now within our community strategizing about how to best deal with the issue of mandatory testing. And we are trying to make people see that testing won't stop the spread of AIDS. And we are right. But we have to learn that it's not enough to be right on an issue. It really has very little to do with that. We have to demonstrate to the politicians that we can and will affect their political fortunes.
I can rap all day and all night, but it's up to you, my friend, to get it right. So get off your duff, man, invest some time. Respect yourself, Holmes, and call the hotline. Forgive me if I'm bold, but you gotta be told AIDS a virus is a bitch if you're exposed. Now listen to the words I'm saying, Holmes, because the life you save might be your own. Be you a butcher, a baker, a candlestick maker? AIDS don't care about the color of your skin. You gotta keep your body strong. Respect yourself and you will live long.
Since it's been
Here's the unabridged explanation of how Deep Dish TV gets to you. It starts with thousands of producers making programs within their communities nationwide. They send their shows to coordinating producers, each in a different region working on a different show. All the edited shows are sent to Deep Dish Central in New York, where we coordinate the network. We take it to an uplink, which sends it to a satellite, which sends its beam back down to this hemisphere in a pattern called a footprint. Cable systems receive the signal in a dish and send it out to their subscribers on a public access channel, through the cable system to your house, to your TV, to your eyes. Deep Dish is a unique network because it isn't driven by profit or religion. We won't try to sell you anything. Public access is a vital component of our First Amendment rights. Stay tuned to Deep Dish and see Fearless TV.
I said chopper.
Acquired dread of sex. Acquired dread of sex. You can get ads from watching TV. It can happen to you. It can happen to me. You can get ads in sex ed classes. You can get ads from the Catholic masses. You can get ads from stupid jokes. You can get ads from ignorant folks. You can get ads from doctors and cops. You can get ads from high school jocks. You can get ads from the Toronto Sun. You can get ads
Well, Liz, I really sincerely believe that sex hasn't had such a bad name since the Middle Ages.
You bet, Lee. A whole generation of kids, straight and gay, has been told that sex equals death. Talk about cats on a hot tin roof.
There's this quote from somewhere. He who desires but acts not breeds pestilence. Now it's the opposite.
Falling back and forth.
It comes from West Africa.
They give you some name or symbol to set you apart. Now it's disease.
They stripped naked.
I think maybe it always has.
It was freezing cold outside.
I don't believe a word.
The real fear.
The real fear comes from not knowing. Probabilities are just a fancy way of saying you don't know. What is 1 out of 10?
I'll never know.
Is it me or not me?
Every morning. Why bother? For hours. I would imagine all the symbols in my body, and I would concentrate on turning the negative symbols to positive ones. I would visualize my cells for hours, imagining them stronger and healthier with each breath. I fought the battle for my body in my mind, and in my mind's eye, I eventually won.
You can't talk.
It comes from apes.
You can't think.
I don't.
You can't remember.
Obviously, nobody likes sex ed classes, so the gay community came up with ingenious educational materials that are fun and explicit.
Which, of course, was perfect ammunition for right-wingers like Jesse Helms.
On October 11th, 1987, 500,000 people marched on Washington for gay and lesbian rights. 3 days later, Senator Jesse Helms passed an amendment through the Senate that would eliminate any federal funding for AIDS educational material that promotes or encourages homosexual behavior. The materials Helms found particularly offensive were the safer sex comic books published by Gay Men's Health Crisis.
Comic books do not encourage a change in that perverted sexual behavior. In fact, the comic book promotes sodomy and the homosexual lifestyle as an acceptable alternative in American society. And Mr. President, I dissent.
What's interesting to me is they couldn't make a direct public health argument to support the Helms Amendment because there isn't one. So what they used is a smokescreen of a debate about is homosexuality right or wrong, do you support it or not support it, or a debate about are these explicit materials something that you want printed by the federal government and the federal government dollars, which obviously is not the case. Those safer sex comics are not printed with any government money at all.
Long ago, and far away, an evil queen put a hunky prince into an enchanted sleep. That is, all but one part of him. Hot studs from all over came to the castle and tried to rouse the prince. But nothing happened. One day, a legendary adventurer arrived to try his skill. He pulled out the sleeping hunk's huge, stiff cock and slipped a magic sheath over the swollen head, holding it in place with a golden ring. With deft strokes of his skilled tongue, he began to arouse other parts of the sleeping beauty. And with a magic kiss, the prince awoke. And with the constant help of a magic sheath, they lived happily ever after.
Because of the homosexual promiscuity in this land.
And one of the things that Customs decided to slash out at the border was a list of safe sex tips that had to do with ass fucking.
It is unprotected anal intercourse. It could be unprotected vaginal intercourse.
Anywhere where it's not going to be a kiss on the cheek, it's not going to be a hug, it's not going to be eating in a restaurant, it's not going to be sitting on a bus.
Unlike commercial gay porn, safer sex videos show men how to talk to each other about AIDS and sex.
What I wanted to talk to you before about is sex, yes. And I want us to agree that it would be absolutely safe. Exactly.
I'm so relieved. I was so nervous. It's been a long time, and I'm concerned about my health.
So am I.
You are?
Of course. Everybody is. Look, I admire you for even bringing it up.
You do?
Of course. So, no exchanging of body fluids.
It's a deal.
Regular TV programs deny the sexuality of people with AIDS.
Annie, do you remember that first night we were shooting the film at my studio? You had taken off your shirt and we were looking at all your lesions. Later, as I was rubbing your back and you were telling me about the problems you were having with relationships and sex, something happened. It was suddenly very quiet in the studio, and my heart was beating fast. I don't know what it was, the heat, your body. The only sound was the steam hissing out of the radiator.
You'd leave the beach maybe around 5.
People with AIDS often rely on their friends and families for support, who in turn must support each other.
My son was 6'3" and he weighed 85 pounds when he died. And he was a model in New York, good looking, strong and all that, and then just to waste down to nothing. And you want to pick him up and hold him and hug him and protect him, and then you're saying, what a horrible disease.
And I'd have to really scream like Mary Jane said one day, just scream in the shower. I'd have to beat on pillows. I would have to just lie on the floor and kick my heels and really get the pain and the hurt out of my body. I go to St. John's Hospital, Medical and Social Services calls me, and they say, here's an out-of-town mother. Well, I remember the first time this happened. I walked in, and here was this woman sitting here crying, about my age, from Canada. And she looked up and she says, no one understands. I have a son, Michael, and he's dying of AIDS. And I just took her in my arms and I says, I have a son, Michael, and he too is dying of AIDS.
When you love your child and you have to sit by and watch a disease like this deteriorate the body that you gave birth to, just, rob it, take it. And it's hard to accept. As a mother, it's hard to accept that you can't help your child.
You cannot.
You've got to have some place that you can scream if you feel like screaming, because most of the time you have to hold in all your feelings. I can remember going to the hospital and always getting bad news, taking my son alone. I had no one to go with me. And the day they told me that he had lost his sight in one eye and would be blind in the other within a very short time, 25 years old. And I can remember wanting to cry and not being able to. And I couldn't even call anybody. How would they understand what I was feeling? My son is in God's hands.
Last year, the media discovered a new angle, AIDS and women.
I don't date, and I do an interview process with people that's much more rigorous and strict than 2 years ago.
It is not surprising that the massive campaigns addressing this new, somehow more legitimate focus for concern, women and AIDS, told the story of how one particular kind of woman was threatened by AIDS, the white middle-class woman, to the exclusion of the stories of those women who are most at risk.
But it's time to go.
Nationally, Black and Hispanic women make up more than 70% of all female AIDS patients.
The AIDS issue is of major concern. 84% of the women in New York City who have AIDS are either Black or Hispanic. And 93% of the pediatric cases of AIDS are either Black or Hispanic children.
These are some of the women with AIDS. A mother of 5 grown children. Her gay son died of AIDS in 1981. Her lover a year ago. She says this is the best year of her life. She has become a spokeswoman and a role model for women with AIDS. A woman with AIDS shared needles with her partner, yet never heard of a risk in 1981. 3 of her children died from AIDS in infancy. Her child, age 7, has ARC. A woman with AIDS who is not aware that her husband of 10 years was a bisexual. He's HIV positive and well. He is attempting to get custody of their child. She has toxoplasmosis. A woman with ARC who has a female partner with 2 children. They shared needles, they were prostitutes, and they sometimes had unsafe sex. They are a family, yet were denied access to family shelters because they are a lesbian couple. They chose to live together on the streets as a family. They now live in a hotel, are on methadone, are in family counseling. A woman with ARC who is attempting to reach her community of other transsexuals. Her attempts to reach and care for others is often met with suspicion and denial. Her commitment takes its toll physically and mentally. A teenage lesbian from the Midwest. She shot drugs for 1 month when she came to San Francisco. She is still in the process of coming out and terrified of dying.
What's going on here today?
Well, the reason we're here is that Hearst Corporation owns Cosmopolitan magazine, and Cosmo just ran probably one of the worst AIDS articles on women, which basically says that if you're a heterosexual woman, even if you're sleeping with a guy who's infected, you're safe, you're not at risk.
Say no to Cosmo! Say no to Cosmo! Say no to Cosmo!
I began thinking of ways to make it apparent to the viewer that what the issues were. And to do that, I felt like we really needed to confront Gould. We needed to go and sit down with the little monster and find out exactly, one by one, each issue he had presented that was putting women in peril.
Not if you subscribe to the theory, supported by considerable fact, which I have just put forward, that you don't get AIDS from sexual activity with a man who has the disease or carries the virus unless you engage in anal sex or there is an open lesion in the vagina when you are having vaginal intercourse. That's wrong.
How many women you think in the United States have a healthy vagina? That is one that has no cuts, no abrasions, no internal lesions.
No mild yeast infection.
No mild yeast infection, no vaginitis, no chlamydia.
I think that I'm being conservative when I add lesions, because I think in these small lesions, because many women have them, that again, that is not a mode of transmission, because if it were, we would have thousands of more cases.
Your data here that you put in a January 1988 Cosmopolitan magazine and based all your theory on is 1 year out of date, a full 1 year. And in that 1 year, there have been somewhere around 1,000 new reported cases of women heterosexually transmitted.
I've known women who practiced nothing but oral sex, and they're HIV positive. I've also known women who practice nothing but heterosexual sex, and even that over short term, and are HIV positive. They're not drug users. They're not the sexual partners of drug users.
They're not prostitutes.
They're not prostitutes, and they're not liars.
This is not just a white male gay disease. I'm not a drug user, never was. I am a woman, it's obvious. I'm Hispanic, and yet I have AIDS. And I try to point out that this can happen to anyone. You don't have to be a particular anything, just be a human person. I was being kept alive on a respirator. I had to have surgery done into my lungs. My lungs got so filled, they just collapsed, they stopped functioning. And of course, my heart stopped during that point. And I had to be revised. It was kind of touch and go there for a while, but then when I got out, at first I didn't know what I wanted to do. I figured I'm gonna die, and my mother kept on saying, you gotta sue these people. They almost let you die. And I'm gonna say, but I'm not gonna be around, you know. But she kept on saying, think of your kids, think of your kids. And I think that's what helped me to get, up back. It's been a long trip, a long way back to get to where I'm at now, physically, mentally, and everything. I do have a major lawsuit, which will be the first in the country on this malpractice type thing.
Against your HMO?
Against my HMO and Mount Auburn Hospital. I have been to them to the emergency room also, and they, from the advice up at my HMO, which is Harvard Community Health, refused to treat me.
Protest bombs and nuclear war. Won't buy a house near Livermore. I live just like a mouseketeer. I don't mess up the atmosphere. The bedroom is the last frontier. Condoms leave a souvenir. Safe sex. Safe sex. Only nuns are safe, you see, but only nuns won't have sex with me. Safe sex.
Last year's March on Washington was not just a celebration of lesbian and gay pride, it was also a turning point in the war against AIDS.
I want every man, woman, and child within the sound of my voice to get involved and get angry.
That's right. Silence equals death. So yell your heads off.
Okay, if you can step back onto the curb or onto the sidewalk and have control. Can you tell me where you're from and why you're here?
Long Beach, California. I'm a PWA and I'm marching to get legislation for funding for AIDS projects.
I'm from Washington, D.C., and I'm here supporting the group that I'm walking with.
Which is?
The PWA group. Yeah.
I'm from Chicago. I'm here to tell the government they're not going to tell me when I'm going to die.
I'm from Anchorage, Alaska, me and my partner, and I'm here because this is real necessary. I think it's real necessary. Also, what's going to happen to people like us, if we don't? Young, black, queer, kind of educated. This is really important, and to be part of this energy, celebration of who we are, what we are. Here we are. Yay!
Civil rights for lesbian and gay people, and we will not be denied.
I would like you to scream the words, how long? How long is it going to take before people get smart? Educated people, not just people with no education. We're not talking about illiterate people. We're talking about senators and congressmen and the fucking president. I just want to hear how long is going to sound when you scream it at Mr. Reagan. On 3, please. Would you do that for me? 1, 2, 3.
America is not a blanket, all one color of uncut cloth, all red or white or blue. America is a quilt made up of many patches, many pieces, many colors, many sizes, many textures, but everybody fits, everybody counts. Everybody must have equal protection under the law in the real America.
Gary Barnhill, David Calgaro, Bobby Campbell, James Martin Case, Paul Castro, Bill Cathcart, Bob Greenwood, Simon Guzman, Bruce Harris, David Hicks,
President, National Organization for Women. Michael Edelman, Norman Armentrout, Tim Barbo, Richard Brower, Gary Cristofoletti, Jim Crandall, Ed Dank, Dennis Dunwoody, Rod Ezio, Rick Black, Tim Graham, Shorty Harris, Don Harrison, Richard Hope, Robin Jacobson, Ken James, Art Agnos, San Francisco Assemblyman,
Charlie. Vicky Batista. Art Blackford Jr. Steve Kane. David Campbell. Tom Lesha.